a clickbait headline that was blowing up on my LinkedIn feed, was talking about how, and I hate these things, so any of you who follow me, you know how much I hate this stuff, that it was these clickbait headlines saying remote work is destroying human flourishing. So something along those lines. And of course, there's 8,000 different versions of that. But basically, that's what was being said based on, it just came out, Gallup's, it's called the State of the Global Workplace Report for 2025. If I remember, I'll put a link for it somewhere. Otherwise, you can just Google that and you'll find it. But anyway, it's a very robust survey study, out there about how people are doing in the world of work, and a lot of really good data around it, a very comprehensive report. You can kind of see where things are overall. Now, I will be the first to say it's not looking great, to be completely honest. Human thriving is going down big time. Engagement is low. There's some rough news in here, and I'm not going to hide that. But what I really wanted to focus on for the purpose of this was this headline around remote work is contributing to the degradation of human flourishing, and why not only can I not stand those kind of statements, but to unpack where there is some truth in what that is saying, but on a more complex level. And what do we do about it? Because the knee-jerk reaction, as many of the articles positioned it, was, well, see, here's more evidence why we need to get people back into the office, which not quite, because there's another statistic in there that contradicts that. Might not be the best solution. So I want to address this whole thing, because if you look at it, you will see that from an engagement standpoint, from a worker engagement standpoint, people how are they doing engaged with their work? Now, again, the statistics are really bad. It's like 21% engaged, 8 out of 10 people not engaged, 20% like actively disengaged. So almost as many people are actively disengaged as engaged. And if you've been in the HR space or just led a team, actively disengaged people can sink a whole ship. So having almost 20% of workers actively disengaged, with well over half just kind of meh, I'm here, that 21% is not great on an average. So it's not great. But what was interesting is remote workers were significantly higher, almost 10% higher. On average, it was 31% compared to 23%. So logically, you might go, hooray, like here's a whole cheer for remote work. This is the data. And this is why, if you think I'm just pro-remote, you're going to hear that that's not the goal of this. You could use that data and cherry pick it and say, here is conclusive evidence that remote work is better for people. They are almost 10% more engaged in their work. I don't think that's a fair way to approach this. Is it at least noteworthy that remote workers tend to be more engaged with their work? Yes. And I will give some context behind that, because I've worked remote, I've worked in an office, I've worked hybrid. So I understand where this is coming from, in the sense that when you're remote, you can deal with the shifts and tide shakes and all the other things of the office much better. It's easier to deal with the ups and downs and things like that. You balance out some of just the drama and the frustration of work, because there's just things about it that you don't have to deal with that help you balance it. So it doesn't surprise me at all that remote workers are more engaged with work. They've got more headspace. They can, just deal with things better. So that good. To be clear, am I just saying, so therefore everybody should work remote? No. And this is where this other data point comes in that is now being, I think, cherry picked and misrepresented, is when you look at overall life evaluation. So how are people doing overall? Again, not great. Just to be clear, only a third on average, and I'm not laughing like, haha, like this is bad. Only a third of people are actually feeling like they're thriving right now. 60% feel like they're struggling. So if you're somebody who feels like you're struggling, you're not alone. 10%, 9% technically, feel like they're suffering. So they're not just like, I'm really having a hard time. Like, it's bad. So almost double digits are in that. Where it was interesting is that remote work actually scored lower than the others. Now, the gap was not as much. It was 36% versus 42 in an on-site remote capable. What's funny, the lowest was, just to be clear, the lowest was an on-site situation with no remote capability whatsoever. So if it was, hey, remote is the only, or on-site is the only option, there is no flexibility, that was the worst, 30%. So on those, they were bad all around. From an engagement, if there was no option to be remote, it was 19% engaged compared to 23 for hybrid and on-site with remote capable and 31 being remote. And then from life, overall life, yes, 36 remote is lower than the 42% hybrid and in the office, but only 30% if you're on site with no remote option. So again, take that for what you will, but what I will say is I stand very firmly behind flexibility. Don't get into the, so that means this. Christopher's not defining flexibility universally, but what I'm saying is people feeling that they have flexibility, whatever that looks like to them, will increase the statistic. And I will sit behind a table and say, you can argue with me till the cows come home. I am telling you that stat is not going to change. That is not a misrepresentation of the data. That is not cherry picking. Flexibility is probably one of the most impactful things that an organization can do for its people. So if you're not prioritizing that, you should. Now, let me get back to the focus of why are these headlines of see remote, they're doing worse than their on-site with flexibility counterparts. So therefore, fully remote must be worse. And then why is it that they're more engaged? Well, I explained why they're more engaged. I think what we're seeing in the data related to why is work location, why is exclusively remote, why are they doing worse than people who are at least hybrid or have some sort of flexible option, but are largely going into the office? And what I would say to that is a lot of people who are remote have been cast into the remote world or put into the remote world, and really succeeding in a completely remote environment, the odds are not in your favor. And that's not just, they really aren't. Unless you're truly in a company that is 100% remote, everybody's remote, it's just the operating MO. If you are working remote in a company that is not 100% remote, you got a lot of things working against you. Now, that doesn't mean so then you should just go into the office. But what I'm saying is it doesn't surprise me that that would be lower than the people that are in a more hybrid setup. If you have an office presence and you're the person who's never there, as somebody who's been that person, you have to be that much more disciplined. You have to be that much more intentional. You have to be that much more outgoing and using the technology to create presence and do all this other stuff. Stack on top of it, when you're fully remote, there is the burden that you have of, there is no real break between your work and your personal life. There are no clean lines unless you make them. And so I see where the data is highlighting that, okay, are truly 100% remote people in a environment that is not 100% remote more vulnerable? Yes. Is the solution, see, hybrid work is better? Well, given the fact that forcing people on site and not having the option is significantly worse in all categories, I would say anyone arguing that being in the office all the time is the best solution, this report conclusively seems to support the fact that that by no means is right. So then, is it just hybrid? You could make that case, but I think it has more to do with figuring out what flexibility looks like and then providing people with the support and resources they need based on their setup. I actually think the on-site no remote capable could go up higher if the people in those environments actually were given support for how do you draw healthy boundaries? How do you, make sure you leave work at a reasonable time? How do you make sure, like, how do you make sure you take your vacation and sick time? Things like that. Like if you set those people up, you might actually see the on-site non-remote worker capability go up in engagement and thriving too. So I say all this because I hate when we see data like this and it gets exploited and cherry picked to tell a story that we've already predetermined is the story, and then we back into it. I also think the fact that the story is about whether remote work is good or bad is the focus, when it's like, good grief. People are disengaged off the map and are struggling and suffering. And we're over here arguing about where they should get their work done. It's like we're standing on the driveway arguing about who left the front door open as the house is literally burning to the ground. So that's the other part of it that I feel is just not accurate and unfair and missing the forest through the trees. But I wanted to be able to give some clarity to this. And I would encourage you to go download the report. Check out the State of the Global Workplace report. I'm not sponsored by Gallup. They didn't pay me to say that. But it is a really interesting report to see the global dynamics of how things are doing, how they're going. You can see where globally certain areas are doing better than others. But overall, the data is not great. And I think we're focusing on the wrong stories rather than figuring out one thing that is clear from this report. Flexibility is better for work engagement and life engagement. Period. It's just better. That doesn't mean make everyone remote. That doesn't mean make everyone in the hybrid. What it means is figure out how do you help people have a more flexible life with that. Clearly from this report, people need support and help. They are struggling right now. I don't care who or what environment they're in or what the setup of your workplace is. Your people need help. There's no saying, nah, I think we're good. I mean, unless your data and you run the same report is in stark contrast. But if this is the average, this is the average. This means that half of the things are lower than this. Just remember that too. This is averaged out. So if on average, thriving is 33%, 58% are struggling, and suffering is 10%, that means there's a lot of companies that are in a much worse situation. So I brought up the DDI leadership report that I think is highlighting some of the crisis that we're in from a state of work. I think this Gallup report is also highlighting yet again why we have so much work to do. And you can look year by year how it's going. It's not going in a positive direction. It's not like, well, we're here, but this is on the way up. It's like, no, actually, I would say we're on the way down or staying flat. In some of the areas, we're going down pretty significantly. So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. I think, again, I'd encourage you to do that, but please, 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 please don't get hung up in the what way of working is right. Please focus on flexibility is what people need. Let's figure out how to get them that and make sure that they have the resources they need to be successful in whatever setup they're in. And let's go from there.